Welcome, everyone. Hi, my name is Jennifer Taylor, and I'm the training coordinator for Food and Beverage Manitoba. We are very excited to have Phil and Kenny with us today from This Commerce Life, and they're going to show you through this wonderful webinar about how messaging and using the right channels is really going to gain your business popularity. So welcome, Phil and Kenny.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Guys, thanks for letting us jump in today and talk to you guys about messaging and channels and how to figure out what the right channels are. We're excited to do this with you. We love doing this stuff. We definitely love hanging out with brands and retailers and just being able to talk about how to grow business. I will jump right into the presentation. We'll kind of explain who we are and what we do. I'm Phil, and then Kenny's over there, all the way in Vancouver. But I guess a couple of things to know as I jump into the presentation is just one. I have to share my screen, otherwise you won't be able to see anything. There we go. And then there we go. So a few things. One is, thank you to Ron and Jennifer and Michael and Food and Beverage Manitoba for letting us do this with you guys. We really appreciate the chance to do this. We are very, very excited. We've kind of been around a little bit, and Kenny and I have spent some time. We were in BC earlier this month, and then we were in PEI before that. We've done a lot of work with food and beverages across the country. So we're pretty excited to be here to do messaging and the right channels with you. A few things about us. So if you didn't know, Kenny and I, we're two retail guys. We believe that Canadians are smart, resourceful entrepreneurs. We think that Canadians need to know about them. So we have a podcast. It's about 7 years old now. And actually it's exactly 7 years old, right, Kenny?
This week.
Yeah, this week, 7 years old. So 401 episodes. We haven't missed a week ever. And so we basically talk about brands, retailers, food processors, people in the country who have really cool stories. So I think if you have a cool story, you want to jump on the podcast, you should let us know. We would love to have you. And then we talk about folks right across the country and what they're doing. That's really cool. We also have a retail insights business and and a consulting business. So between the two, we share best practices as we're doing here. We also play the role of connector a lot. So we help entrepreneurs find great partners. You'll hear us do that a lot on the podcast and off the podcast. And then we also offer a ton of strategic help for entrepreneurs as well. So as companies solve their problems and just try and find ways to grow. So you can check us out. We're at This Commerce Life, but that's kind of who we are. And then we, we're pretty excited. Kenny, did I miss anything? What did I miss?
You just keep plugging along there.
Yeah. All right. Kenny is the one who keeps me in check. A couple of things. So one is, as we go through this, what you don't know about us yet, but you'll learn to kind of get to know about us is we're pretty unscripted, and then we're also we don't need to keep a pace. So if we start driving you down a path that you don't like, or you have questions, stop us, ask us, hit us in the chat. I've got a separate screen, so when I look this way, it's because I've got the chat open so I can see if there are other questions. And so if you have any questions at all, make sure you ping us, and then we'll answer them as we go. And then we'll leave some time at the end for Q&As as well. So we're kind of around for you all the time. The other thing you need to know about us is we are those guys. So now that you know us, that makes us friends. that means you can pick up the phone and call us or email us at any time. And Kenny and I are kind of those guys that you can call and ask one-off questions and, things that you just, you need a resource for. We tend to be those guys that like to connect people to things. Okay. So let's jump into messaging and the right places to be. Everyone who starts in a business starts here. And so everyone kind of like starts with socials. They start with sharing things. When you start a business, everyone gets super excited and starts looking for Instagram channels and TikToks that you should be filming and those sort of things that immediately drive you attention and those sort of things. So, so we know that people start here. It'd be silly for us not to acknowledge that. But we do think that there are other places to start. We think that there's a better way to do this. If you started a business and you started here, which most people do, there's no issue with that. We just need to probably do some rewinding or taking a step back to look at some things. We're all about looking for attention. So we all want likes, we want shares, we want reshares, we'd like it to go viral. We'd like, our friends and family to be able to like post and tell other people about us. So we walk around going, here's my Instagram handle, here's my TikTok. Make sure you share this or follow me, like and subscribe, right? Those sort of things. So everyone knows that blurb, right? So if you like what I do and you want to keep seeing more stuff, please smash that button below for the like and subscribe, right? So we know these things happen. But when we're looking for attention, we just want to make sure that we're being intentional about where we get that attention from. The other thing that happens when you start there and you start with socials is you run into two things right away. One is you get a little bit overwhelmed. Everyone has, I call it the 6-week window, and it's usually about 6 weeks in of creating, right? Because when you start posting socials about your business, you get really excited about what can happen, where can I share, what can I do, those sort of things. And about 6 weeks in, you get a little bit overwhelmed because you're like, what is the schedule? What day is it today? Oh God, it's Tuesday. I've got to post something new. And then two is you start asking questions, right? Like, is it working? I keep posting. It's been 6 weeks. Why isn't anything working? Why isn't anything happening? Why? Right? So there's kind of like lots of things that happen along the way, that cause us to kind of slow down and stop. And then generally what happens at this point is founders, anyone who's doing socials kind of goes, I have nothing else to say. I've said everything I want to say. What do I post about now? How do I get inspiration for what I do? I'm a little bit burnt out. So that happens a lot. It's very, very common. And then we hear this a lot, obviously. And so we always, we want to dial it back a little bit. We want to make sure that you're kind of starting, when you start from the right places, you generally do not burn out. You generally don't. I can tell you, I did an inventory just before I came on this podcast, and I was checking how many social accounts I have, and then how many I think I'm offloading a handful of them. But right now I watch over and I participate in 8 Instagrams, 9 Facebooks, 5 LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter anymore because I don't like Twitter, but I do have a Blue Sky account now, so we can talk about that too if you want. And then that doesn't include, kind of 4 Google Chat channels, 2 Slack channels, and about 18 WhatsApp channels. Some of those personal and family. So when you're a marketer, you handle a lot of socials. And then sometimes you really do burn out. But if you start in the right places, you can actually generally manage. You see, I look like a pretty calm guy. I don't look like I've burnt out. At least I don't think I've looked like I've burnt out. You guys can tell me if I look different. But you can do this and not burn out. And then you can do this and actually grow the business. Just important for you to kind of manage it, in a thoughtful sort of way. So we're going to try and show you some of that. And then, so we're going to take a couple of steps back, show you how you get to that spot, and then help you find the channels that work for you. So why did this happen, right? So one is when you start with socials, when you build a brand, you start with socials, it's natural to be excited. It's natural to want to share, but there are a bunch of things that you should do ahead of time so that you don't catch yourself in this emotional roller coaster. Sometimes you see it, maybe you've seen it on LinkedIn as well, is you would have definitely seen, people who kind of go, I've taken a break from LinkedIn, or because I'm emotionally burnt out from sharing, and that is when you expend a lot of creative activity, kind of sharing or building socials, right? And so what we don't want is we don't want you to do that. We'd actually like you to keep your heart out of most of socials and keep a very focused plan in play that keeps you from burning out. Everything you do should be tied together. Okay, so that's the first step. Is when we take 2 steps back, what the graphic on the left shows you is when you build a strategy and then you tie digital, traditional, so things like social media, SEO, banner ads, mobile, traditional stuff like retail and point of sale, packaging, print, and then your trade shows or pop-up shows or PR or farmers markets, all the way to your e-commerce platform, your any digital solutions you have, Shopify, all of these sort of things, they should all go together. All these tools should go together. And so you can look at this from your business perspective and go, yeah, of course, duh. Like the middle idea here, this part is my business, it's my product. But the other part to look at this is there's a whole set of words here, or a vision for what your product is. Like there's a physical manifestation of your product, and then there's like an emotional, cerebral, intellectual part of your business and the product that you are that has a whole set of words around it, right? And so we think that when you go to market, what you have to have is those set of words, that idea of what your business is, so that you can actually build, kind of proper wording and then a proper plan around it. Okay. So let me know if this graphic doesn't make sense. This is kind of like, I went from like, hey, don't be frustrated, to like, bam, here's a graphic. Digest this for a second. So we do think that social media, SEO, they're great tools, but they need to be tied into the rest of your communication strategy. Otherwise, you do wind up burning up a ton of time rethinking and thinking about things.
I think what you do with this is one of those graphics that you kind of print and put aside and look at it. Because I think what happens with most people, and I'll speak to some of this because typically he has to explain everything to me because I can get very emotional and I run. So I am sort of the one who does that. So I would have the idea or the product or whatever I'm trying to do. And the immediate run is to sort of the digital, right? You have it, you got a product, you got an idea, you got a package. What do? Well, you got to tell everybody. Then you got to run, you got to run, you got to run. I got to go to Instagram, I got to go to Facebook, I got to go here, I got to go here. And you're just running, right? And like Phil said, I can run for 4 to 6 weeks. And then what happens, I look at it and I'm thinking, I don't know how many more pictures I can post. I don't know how many times I can say this is the greatest product since the beginning of time. And then what happens? I'm frustrated, and then I'm usually reaching out to him, just angry because I'm thinking, okay, this is stupid. I don't know why I'm doing this. Like I'm killing myself. I don't I don't think I'm getting the likes I want. I don't think I'm doing this. And that's usually when he says, well, okay, that's great. So you started with your little blue ID in the middle. Did you actually sit down and make a plan? My answer is usually the same. Yeah, I did. I was going to go to Facebook, Instagram. I just told you, you're not listening to me. I did it. I went. They're not coming. Why? So I think when you take this one, it's one of those ones that if you look at it intellectually, you think, yeah, that makes all sense. You got to do all this stuff. Typically, most of us don't, especially entrepreneurs. We run to the light green bubble and we forget about the other 5 bubbles. Okay, go
Yeah.
back, Phil. It's just because I look at
Kenny,
this and I know the first time you showed me this, I thought, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I get all that. But, I've got to go to the bubble. Let's get to the bubble.
so Kenny has a tea business, and kind of 6 weeks in,
Among a
Kenny was
million other
like,
things.
listen, how many videos can I do of me making a tea? Like, why don't they get it? I spent 6 weeks talking about this. Why not yet? Right. And you're kind of like, okay, but it's because there's not enough. You need to. And he's like, it's tea. Like, what do you mean there's more, right? But there is always more. So part of this is, how do you get to the more, right? How do you make a plane that kind of like slow rolls that and kind of keeps things moving, so that you can adjust around. All right. So some things that you need in order to kind of get to that sustainable plan. So before you, kind of the pieces that you need to do before you start planning out social media, and then, kind of breaking through past burnout so that you can actually get great communications, and then also, and then be able to get great social media, as well as, SEO and banner ads and everything else. Is you kind of need to answer, two things ahead of time, right? So we try and do this. We do this in two stages, because most marketers would say to you, what's your vision? What's your mission? What's your goals and strategies and action? Which is very lofty. But Kenny and I like to do this a different way. We like to just ask, who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? And who do you do it for? And that kind of like leads you into mission, vision, goals, strategies, but it's an easier way to get there. The when you jump into mission, vision, everyone thinks, like, my shoulders go up, because you think, it's almost like singing, like you've got to like clear your lungs, and then you've got to get this great big mission out. But who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? Who do you do it for? You answer all the time. You answer it at the farmer's market, when you're with relatives, or um, your uncle's neighbor's friend introduced you to somebody new and goes, oh, Kenny does that thing. Kenny, tell them about the thing, right? So what do? You go through, hey, I'm Kenny. What do I do? Why do you do it? Who do you do it for, right? And that kind of like, so if I were to leave you with something on this slide, is take this. We'll share these slides with you at the end of the hour, but kind of take that part away and answer those four things for yourself, right? And then we'll show you how it translates into mission, vision, goals, strategies, so that you can get to the social media bits. Okay.
I think everybody sort of feels sorry. Like, I think
Yeah.
everybody again wants to jump, and you want to get right into the doing. I think it's the breadth of air that's required, especially in the entrepreneur world. So, like, who are you is obviously very simple. You're Jennifer Taylor. What do you do is where we sort of really want to make sure you start grinding down. So, like, I don't necessarily make tea. I mean, that's a byproduct. That's physically what we do. We have a tea. But what am I really trying to do is I'm trying to be part of your life with this tea. I'm trying to give you an opportunity at the end of the day, or sitting with family and friends, of sitting down and really enjoying a good cup of tea and having good conversation, having, time together. Or if you're alone, having a smile because you're just really enjoying that moment of peace and tranquility. So get a little more, and you don't have to get into the flower like Phil said. You don't have to sit there and make sure all the words just line up so nicely and all that cleanliness. Is just really think, what do you actually do? So if you're making something or providing a service, what is it that you actually do? It is not the physical making of the product. It's, why are you making the product? Why do you do it? All these questions, because you'll find that if you can start there, and trust me, because he's the marketer. I'm not the marketer. I do more operational. So it's him trying to grind me down and say, breathe, figure out what it is first. Then it's much easier to talk about it, as just to going, I make tea, which again is true, but not really what I'm trying to do per se.
So let's show you what that looks like, right? So we kind of gave you who we were, and we did break it out. So Kenny and I did this exercise. We actually do this a lot, because we're kind of like always thinking about this. And podcast is starting to be a norm now, but we've kind of spent 7 years trying to explain ourselves to everybody. So who are you? We're two retail guys that believe Canadians are smart, resourceful entrepreneurs that Canada needs to know about, right? That's who we are. What do? We teach principles of retail, share best practices, find great stories of entrepreneurs for inspiration. We play the role of connector to help entrepreneurs find great partners. So that's what we do. Okay. And then Why do you do it? You guys all know this already. Our retail world is complicated. Some of you would say it's effing nuts. You might leave out the effing, or you might add a couple of more expletives. Most people add more, not less. But it's complicated, and sometimes it's a little bananas. So we offer temporary strategic support for entrepreneurs, and we help companies solve their problems, help them find a way to grow. Right. Sometimes actually helping them, and then sometimes that's just connecting them with great stories so they can find some inspiration about how other people have done it so that they can do it different. And then who do you do it for? We do it for professionals that work in packaged goods, or you could put professional nutcases, all of us, AKA, that stay in this packaged goods world when there are probably clearly more sane places to be. And then we actually try to explain to consumers how our world is nuts and how we make their world nuts and how we make this world really complicated. So that's kind of what we do. So we actually stop to do this for ourselves. And we actually do this like a couple of times a year because we normally, I mean, businesses evolve and they change all the time. And then we actually find sometimes that we evolve and we don't know that we've evolved. So we actually cover things that we were on our Atlantic road trip. We were in PEI driving around filming, and the two of us did this exercise, and we kind of like realized, holy crap, like the greeting or the intro we'd been using for the last 6 or 8 months didn't work for us anymore. So there's all these moments that you should definitely kind of work through this. Don't do it all the time though; it'll make you crazy. So I would suggest like once a year, twice a year tops. We turn these into action items. So then we take these and we break them into vision, goals, strategies, and action. Right. I'm gonna leave this here so you can see it, but it's different from what's on the last page, right? As we break these out into a little bit more detail, there's a chunk more words here. And then we try and get very specific about what we do. So in the goals, you'll see us break it out: principles of retail, best practices, right? Or the strategies. We teach local brands how to be best partners for retailers and how to make a profit sustainably. So you can see us take it down one more level because it's important to have that kind of detail. And you'll see why in just a sec. When you've got these, okay, so the other part of this is when you've got these two, so you're on this side, the left side here, you're about to make a jump, is when you've got these two pieces, it forms the center of this next piece, which is your message, right? And so when you've got your message, all of a sudden you've got this ability to take that message and start doing a whole bunch of things with it without doing anything new. Because now what you've done is you've done the thinking. And so now all you got to do is copy, paste, right? Slice and dice for your own variation. But you don't change the words. You don't do any of those things. What you do is you start sharing bits and bobs of that the way you want, right? So what we got from the last page was a full message of who we are. We also have a whole set of like important words. So keywords makes everyone crazy. Keywords is a search engine optimization term. But the truth is, when you get keywords or important words to your business, it allows you to form a whole bunch of other things, right? So the keywords are how people find you. It allows you to be able to create content like blogs or SEO, social media, and then ads. And then you start the cycle all over again, right? So all of a sudden, when you take this and you start moving it through this cycle, you can take bits and bobs of this and keep doing this for a long time to come. This is one of those things that starts to help move the whole business forward. And then this is the cycle that allows you to not burn out, when you're kind of doing social media and things like this, right? Because now what you're doing is you're taking words that you already thought about, the phrases you have and all of those sort of things and all that goodness, and then you start to turn it into a whole set of kind of like keywords, blogs, SEO, socials, ads.
Can you maybe go back like to the
Yeah.
page before? Like what would you
Yeah.
like, so for example, like what, because this is what we do. Like
Yeah.
this is really clear as to who we are, what we do, why we do it, who we do it for. Like when
Yeah.
you're looking at this though, because if they're all going to sit down and do this, what, like if you were to tell somebody, okay, I would pull keywords now, what are we doing?
So I'm looking for things that are going to define who we are, right? So, these are important things. And sometimes it's a phrase, sometimes it's keywords. Local brands is a keyword for us, right? Because we look for local brands, we want to be able to help them. Entrepreneurs is a keyword for us. Amazing products is another keyword for us that's probably hard to rank for because it's quite common. Retail is a word that we would want to win. Profit profit sustainably would be a phrase that we'd want to win. That's kind of how we go to market around this. Like those are words that I would pick out right away, and then try and help kind of turn them into something. If I can give you an example, is even something like this: inspire consumers to understand what happens behind the scenes when a product goes to market. If I were to take that phrase and say, I'm going to use that as one of my campaigns, if you will, or one of my kind of cycles through this, and I took that simply as a straightforward thing, I could actually take that entire phrase and drop it in here, and then be able to make a whole bunch of social posts around this. And it could be the principle around, here's what happens, right? Like when a brand starts, they go to farmers market, they realize they have something great, and then it turns into a retail product. They do their margin assessment, and then they start talking to retailers about grocery stores, about getting to grocery stores, right? And that could be its own thing. But then a really interesting turn of phrase could be, we met a cheese brand where the founder used to be a welder who was then a beekeeper who turned into a cheesemaker. Find out about his story here. That turns into SEO there. And then the social post would be welder, beekeeper, cheesemaker. Seems straightforward to me. Click here to find out more, right? So all of a sudden you've got the ability, and that phrase can generate, we've got 400 episodes. So I could actually do 400 posts like that, and never really kind of tire of that process. Does that?
Taking the sort of one sentence
Yeah.
and now saying, okay, if I were to take this one sentence, I could probably go back to, let's say, the 400 podcasts, or I
Yep.
could walk a store, walk a shelf, or hear the news and inspiring story. I've got more content. I may never have to leave that you wouldn't do
That's
that,
right.
but I would never leave that one sentence because I'm not scrambling at week 7 because I've run out of ideas.
Yeah.
Because of the clarity of how you start it, it gives you the stories as they go on. And that's why we really tell people the idea and running the social is the way we do it. It's not the way we should do it. Breathe, figure it out first. So you've got some context, then start, because you will get less burnout. Trust me, I learned that the hard way a couple
The
times.
the other way, it's a weird example, so stay with me for a second. And I think if you're too young for this reference, I apologize. But in the movie Forrest Gump, there's a moment when Forrest's friend on the shrimp boat starts telling him about his family and how his family does shrimp. And he goes through an exhaustive list of all the different ways that you can use shrimp, right? Shrimp gumbo, shrimp tacos, shrimp, and then it's like, I don't know how long, but it's like 10 minutes later before he ends and he goes, that's all I have to say about shrimp, right? And so what you're trying to do is you are trying to replicate that moment, in your messaging and in your keywords. Is if you can figure out what your shrimp moment is, think of that list that, and if you've not seen it, go to YouTube and just find it. Or I'll send out a link when we send out the message. Maybe I'll send you, Jennifer, the YouTube link. But there's a moment when he really does, like, he goes through it. And so if you think about this and go, how do I find my shrimp moment where I have somebody tell somebody all the uses that you can do with my product, and then each one of those becomes its own blog posts, SEO, socials, ads. So all of a sudden now you've got, so he says, here are all the things you can do with shrimp, and he starts with shrimp gumbo, and all of a sudden you've got an entire set of blog posts, SEO, socials, ads, keywords around shrimp gumbo. And then you do it again with shrimp tacos. I don't know why I only have 3 things that you can do with shrimp, because there's like 10 minutes I think he goes on for. But in any case, if you understand, that's kind of the moment that you're looking for through the thinking of these exercises, because that allows you to be able to build into so much more. Okay. Once you do that, what you start to do is what we're talking about is you start building, kind of organic content. You start building a campaign that allows you to be able to build a whole chunk more. And you can see socials as part of this, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's so much more to this exercise, right? Is when you do this and you find your messaging and you find your keyword and your content, all of a sudden you can, right? Like everything has a blog post, long form content that goes on your website that now helps consumers find you. It starts to rank in SEO. So Google reads your blog and goes, oh, got it. That's what you should be known for. You can run ads against that. And then you can also create socials that drive people to you, right? So out of the things that you can do, this gives you 4 touch points of being able to get a consumer to convince them that you should be buying my product, or you should figure out what my products are. Okay. And then I like to explain this because marketers are fancy and we always say those things. And usually when I say them, everyone looks at me funny, but you'll hear people say campaign. Marketers say campaign, not people, just marketers. But a campaign really is an organized effort to communicate one idea. That's all. Okay. So when a marketer says, "Ooh, we're going to build a fancy campaign," it just means we want to be able to put a whole bunch of things together so that we can actually share one idea with an audience. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to kind of spend the last, hopefully 10 minutes on social platforms. And then we can kind of, and then we can take some Q&A hopefully at the end. Top social media platforms in 2024. There's no real surprises here. Facebook, and Meta, right? So Meta is Facebook and Instagram, and then WhatsApp are the 3 things that Facebook owns. It is by far the largest social platform right now out there, period. And so you kind of can't ignore these guys, right? So Facebook and Instagram, you can do social posts, you can do paid posts, you can have shop channels through Facebook and Instagram, and then WhatsApp is starting to evolve. It's starting to turn into more than just a messaging app, and so it's one of these things that we can keep an eye on. If anyone has exposure to WeChat, so what I've done here is I've isolated to Canadian platforms. Obviously, in the world, especially like somewhere like China, you've got a whole bunch of a whole bunch of other apps. They've got a really large messaging buying platform called WeChat, but I've kind of left those out for now. I've just stuck to Canadian platforms. YouTube, gone crazy. I feel like YouTube is the one that's taking over right now. Everyone's switched to YouTube. Everyone's kind of on this. Video ads and kind of like videos is the thing. You just as someone who's focused on this stuff, you just got to make sure that you've got the right audience for this. Okay, so I'm sharing platforms with you. We'll talk about it in a second. You want to make sure that I forgot to tell you that in your vision, goals, actions, strategies, and actions, make sure that you are clear on who your audience is. So when you create message and you start building, make sure you know who they are, because when you get here, what you will see is, gosh, there's a lot of platforms. There's a lot of work to do. You're not going to do it in everything. What you need to do is decide which ones make sense for you. Don't let anyone tell you where you must be. Okay. It's important for you to do that. I'll tell you why in a second too. So actually, I'll tell you why now, because TikTok, for example, is exploding on the market. And so we as a podcast, we started doing video content, and everyone said to us, "Oh, you must be on TikTok, right?" And we were for a little bit. We were for 3 or 4 months. You can ask Kenny, I was probably the least calm you've ever seen me, because content creation on TikTok is a little bit of it takes some work, even if you're skilled with a camera or you're skilled with a phone. Um, but it wasn't our audience, right? Because I got a lot of views. I think the biggest post I got had 11 or 12,000, kind of views or impressions on it. We didn't have a single one come back to us, come back to listen to the podcast, right? So there are moments where you're going to have to dial into what is the right audience for you, and are you getting the right return, right? So at that time, I was the grouchiest because I was spending all this time, kind of bulking up on TikTok, only to realize nobody really cares. Nobody's going from TikTok and crossing over into Spotify or Apple Podcasts to listen to our podcast episodes. So we dropped it, right? Because there's no return. So measuring and making sure that you have return is really important. Telegram, we've seen Telegram. Telegram's kind of the WhatsApp rival. They've been around a long time, but Telegram is also doing some marketing now. You can get to Telegram groups. You can even solicit people in Telegram. Sometimes they get really angry, but then you reach a lot of people, right? So your probabilities of converting are very high. And then we've seen Telegram, kind of rise, because like in places like the Ukraine, Telegram is their primary source of comms, right? So they get war news basically, or conflict news through Telegram as well. Okay. Snapchat still around, quite interesting, kind of made somewhat nefarious name for itself because it was all about disappearing chats, which made all the parents crazy about like, what are my teenagers posting on there that disappear in 24 hours? The other thing that Snap is really good at is geofencing. So what you'll see is a Super Bowl is a great example, and then World Cup is a great example. Is you'll see big brands use Snapchat to geolocate. So last year during the Super Bowl, they had a campaign to attract super influencers. So on Snap, they posted a limited edition Nike shoe that was tied to the Super Bowl. And so if you were kind of like one of 1,000 influencers or 1,000 people to see that and get to the location, and you could show them a screenshot of the coupon that was in Snap, you got a shot at one of these limited edition shoes. So there are some really neat ways to use this. If you are in a farmer's market and you target a younger audience, there is an interesting way for you to release a coupon that says, listen, if you're at this farmer's market, Kenny and I were at the Kelowna farmer's market not long ago, you could release a snap that says, if you're around and you see this, take a snap of this coupon and come see us. And then you get free product, or you get something, at a discount. So interesting ways to use it. Pinterest has been around a long time, really great for SEO, kind of terrible for conversion. So we know everyone gathers pictures from there. We don't actually see anyone converting out of it. So really good for sharing information, not really good for conversion. The reason I'm sharing all these with you, because in your brain, you know who your audience is when things, when they ping for you is what we call it. So when it rings true for you as I'm describing them, then you should mark this down as a channel you should be in. If it doesn't, don't, right? Kenny and I are awfully realistic about, what works for entrepreneurs and what doesn't. Sometimes you kind of go, I don't have time for that. Like if I'm just posting so somebody can see it, like I got other things to do. I got to worry about packaging. I got to get production out of it. I got to answer customer emails, those sort of things. You don't have time for every channel. Do the ones that make sense for you. Okay.
No, we're deliberate on that. Like when we
Yeah.
sit down and do the who, what, when, why we do, who we do it for, et
Yeah.
cetera. I mean, right by doing that, it may preclude most of these.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think this is why we always go back and tell you to start at the basics again, as opposed to running. For example, if Snapchat is trending, kids 14 to 20, I don't know what it is. I don't really care. But let's say that's it. We definitely know they're not listening to our podcast. So why are we wasting any
Yeah.
time or effort on there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you get your messaging and who you are and your keywords down pat, you may look at the 12 and say, you know what, there's only 3 here that my people are going to be at. So why am I wasting time on the other 9 focus on the 3 or whatever the numbers. If I mean, I don't care, but again, it's just knowing who you are, what you do, and why you do it. That will dictate, for the most part, where you're going, right? I think
Yeah.
that's sort of what we always keep coming back to. That's why we always go back to the beginning. Once you get your messaging down, I think it makes this a lot easier.
We and you'll see we give examples, but LinkedIn, for example, because we're for retail pros, that is our number one platform, right? And so our priorities are always LinkedIn first. If I can make LinkedIn first, we post videos to YouTube, and then if I get the chance, I will reach out to people on Instagram, and then if I get the chance after that, I'll reach out to people on Facebook, right? That's our priorities, right? And then I will tell you, right, because we are kind of like a 2.5 man business. Is there are lots of moments that we run out of time, right? So we do what we do, and then we focus on the places that make the most sense.
You look at it, because we are a business and we do describe ourselves that as retail. Where else would you be out of these 12 outside of LinkedIn? Like LinkedIn,
Right.
logically, that's where our market is. That's where entrepreneurs are going. That's where brands are going. That's where retailers are going. That's where distributors are going. That is our community. So for us to take a lot of time and spend it on Facebook, if that demographic's not there, is what's the point,
That's right.
right? And
That's right.
nobody can tell us different. Nobody can say, well, you need to be on Facebook. No, we don't. We do, but maybe this much and only here, and that's it.
Okay, and then so I've included Reddit and Quora here. Just know that these are great places to put things for SEO, for posting, and it's a great place to answer questions about your own brand. So just watch how long you're in Quora and Reddit. If you're not a Reddit user, Reddit is like a deep, dark hole that you can climb into and never climb out of. So just be careful what you do. The other one is X. If you're still on it, X is a good place to be. The other one that's emerging now is Blue Sky, which is the flip side of X. So just, kind of keep an eye on whether those make sense for you. Last thing on this slide is keep an eye on TikTok. It's literally like fresh legislation, but they have voted to shut down TikTok in Canada. But it's weird because the what they've passed so far that we don't have a lot of clarity around is they've basically said it's not okay for TikTok to operate out of Canada. So meaning they can't have offices here in Canada, but they're not going to ban the app. So it's a little bit weird is if TikTok is one of your primary or one of your major avenues, you just want to keep an eye on what they're doing with it because it's not clear how that works, right? There is no Canadian province, there's not going to be an office here, but it doesn't mean that you can't access TikTok while you're in Canada. So it's a little, we're not sure, I guess, is what I'm saying. So if you're going to use it, just keep an eye on it. It's pretty fluid. Okay. What we wanted to do is make sure that you choose the right media platform. So when you start doing this, right, make sure that you have your audience age in mind, the medium your audience prefers. And then the other thing you want to do is make sure that you are measuring all the time. So that example I gave you about TikTok, we did the work, right? So a whole chunk of work, tiny bit of engagement equals, no, I'm not doing that anymore, right? It makes no sense to me. I can do one post in LinkedIn and get a ton of impressions and ton of engagement and then clickbacks to go to my channels versus, it took me an hour to shoot this one TikTok and I'm not getting anything back, even though I got 12,000 impressions, right? So you just want to make sure that you are going where you want to go, and that you're getting the engagement you want to get. Okay. And then the last thing is be real about the resources that you have. Okay. Because what you will read everywhere is video is the thing, right? But not all video is created equal. If you're going to do video, you got to do it right. You got to do it again because it makes sense for your audience. But that doesn't mean that it's right for you. Sometimes a post with a static picture, heaven forbid, but like an old school, straight up square picture with a post will do as much for you as a little video will. So you just want to make sure that you're being really realistic about what you have to do, because all of these people are going to tell you need video, but they don't run your business, right? So meanwhile, in your head, you're going, I'm going to blow an hour trying to figure out this TikTok thing or how to make it right. But I could have spent the hour fulfilling orders or manufacturing product or, you know, or taking a nap, for goodness sakes, right? So you kind of like, you do need to like take everybody else's recommendations and then decide what's right for you and make sure you've got the right resources. Okay. All right. With that said, I wanted to go through a couple of different, kind of brands. I picked out, these are all Canadian. So I didn't pick anything that's not Canadian, just because I wanted to be able to show you what some people are doing that are wickedly good. So Made with Local, we love Sheena and Andrew Russell. They are based out of Halifax. They made the Made with Local bar, and these are amazing snacks. So if you've never had one before, you should. The new protein nut butter cookie is fabulous. And then I always joke with Sheena when we see her that she looks exactly like she does on Instagram. This is a great example of someone who you should go check them out. I left them here for a reason. But Sheena has done a really good job of being a founder-led personality that's on her socials. She's everywhere. She's actually started to back off a little bit because they have enough socials now that she doesn't need to lead with her. But it is a great way to endear people to you because she's an amazing lady, right? So when you meet her, everyone who meets her loves her immediately. Like I know of no one, like every time we're around her, there's like throngs of people around her, right? Because she's just a genuine personality and they've used that to create the persona for their brand. So I think they're doing some really amazing things. I chose their Instagram because I thought it's really dynamic. They definitely skew younger, so they kind of skew between 17 and 25-ish, and you can see it in the way they comment. So funny thing is down here, my favorite animal is A-Russ when he's hitting the phone. It took me like 3 tries before I figured out what the hell she was talking about. But my daughter looked at that right away and went, that's funny. And I was like, I have no idea what but my daughter's 18, right? And she's like the perfect target market for this, right? So it is one of those things where you go, when you've got the right audience and you've got the right language, that's what it means. If you're older and you still don't get it, my favorite animal is A-Russ. A-Russ is Andrew Russell. So A-Russ is Andrew Russell when he's hitting the phone, and that's just when he's on the phone, he's a hilarious personality, I guess is the old person translation, if you will. Okay, so I thought Made with Local, very cool. So I wanted to leave this here in case you ever wanted to see it. I picked Mother Love Kombucha, all the way on the other side of the world, other side of Canada. She is a Facebook person. So this is all about Facebook, right? Because she is about moms. She is about making sure that moms make good choices for their kids in terms of drink. And then so this is a great example of how she's kind of come. And then you can see the tone difference, right? Like the other one was like, you're 17, I'm 50, so I can't even pretend to talk like a 17-year-old. But, and then this one is like, moms, we're eco-friendly, we're community-based, come, try and figure out how, like, let me show you how to ferment your own stuff if you're not going to make it. Here's how you make, kind of this kind of kid-friendly mini makers market. Like, let me show you how to make a kombucha bar birthday party, and then a mini makers kids market, right? So kind of this, it's a full tone switch, right? Because she is after moms and kind of making healthy drinks for kids, if you will. Okay, so totally different. And then here I picked, I didn't pick out, if you guys know of any, definitely throw it in there. But I picked out Nix, which is a Toronto-based brand. They're women's wear, and their TikToks are fantastic. Like, they are right on point. They get a lot of engagement. They get a lot of clickbacks. And it's like, it's apparel, right? So it is kind of the right format for this sort of thing, right? So, but they're on TikTok. And so what I did want to do is I also left a link down below for you to kind of look at there's 2 links there on, shutting down TikTok or the TikTok ban in Canada and what that means, just so that, celebrate that it's amazing, right? Like Nix has 167,000 followers, which I think we'd all kill for, but they seem to also get engagement out of it. But it's also a significant risk, right? Because now we don't know what this means exactly. Okay. And the last one, because we're old, I left our LinkedIn here. I told you guys earlier that if we had a choice, where would we go first? And it is LinkedIn. Each one of these is kind of a post, and then you can see they're old, right? Like I think they're well written because I wrote them, so I'm biased, but they're well written, but they're old, and they are targeted at professionals, right? So this is us being slightly educational, a little bit aloof, hopefully a little bit funny as well. And then we, kind of try and showcase a bunch of different people, right? So just 4 very different ways of looking at social channels. This is how you use messaging, right? Like each one of these brands, including us, we've done a lot of targeting to think about who it is that follows us, who it is that we're after as an audience, and then what does our tone and our sound like, right? And so if I do have a choice, this is, if I'm in the middle of like producing videos and making a webinar, and then, so the only place I get to post, it'll be LinkedIn first, because that's my priority, right? LinkedIn, then Instagram, and then Facebook. So sometimes we catch flack. We have some older followers. Kenny's mom is one of them. And so when I don't post things in Facebook, I get a little bit of a, what the heck, right? But sorry, Noni, but the audience is where it is, right? So you choose what you have to you prioritize to make sure that you've got it right. Okay. All right. So key takeaways for today. Be sure that you know and have written down, who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? Who do you do it for? Build a mission and a vision. Use all the same words in your execution and your comms plan. Don't change the words, because those are the right things to do. Those are the right words to be using. And then pick the right channels, right? So we just showed you a bunch of social channels. Make sure that you're picking the right channel for you and your audience, okay? And then lastly, measure. So if you shoot a video, how long did it take you? What did you get back for it? If it took you an hour to do that TikTok and you had fun, that's worth something. But if you took an hour, you didn't have fun, and you didn't get any clicks, and you didn't get any engagement, not fun, not worth it. So just make sure that you're always measuring, so you know where you're getting the best bang for your buck. That is the way that you're going to be able to get these things to go. Okay. I left 5 minutes. So hopefully, if you have questions, let us know. I left some contacts. Obviously, Jennifer and Ron, you can hit them up with questions and they can forward them on to us as well. You can find me and Kenny at thiscommercelife.com. You can find This Commerce Life wherever you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, a lot of other places. So thank you for letting me drone on. And then we would love it. If you have any questions for us, ask away. You can either unmute yourself and then ask it, or throw the question in the in-call messages, and then we'll happily answer them. And if we run out of time, Kenny and I will answer them anyway, and then kind of get them.
Yeah, or if you think about it later, one tomorrow, those are the emails. They're super easy.
Yeah.
It's Phil at Kenny at. Just don't be scared to reach out.
Okay, I just minimized it. Any questions for us?
Everybody's thinking. Good.
Thinking.
Phil?
Yeah.
So just a lot of our members are, as you know, they can be pretty small.
Yeah.
So they have to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
So do you suggest that they find social media person, a marketing person, or like how much is that, down the road? How much is that worth to a company?
So if you have your kind of mission vision, so if you've done the other pieces here, right? So the comms pieces, like the who you are, what you do, who do you do it for. If you have those pieces, you can definitely look at hiring. And then the hack I would give you is you probably all live near a community college or a college base, and I would go and find the marketing prof, somebody like that, because for example, I'm here in Toronto. I teach at Centennial College, which is also based here in Toronto, and I teach digital marketing. So I am always looking for moments where I can give my students real life skills. And so posting for a brand, there's nothing better than that. So I would go to your local college and ask and see if somebody, the marketing prof wants to send you a couple of names that you could take on as students. But you do need the documents that we've talked about, right? So if you haven't answered the who and the what, who you do it for, why do you do what you do, I would answer those first, right? Because the first questions that a social media person might have for you is, okay, what do you want me to post? Like, what do you want me to talk about? In that moment, you haven't helped yourself. You've made it worse, right? Which is usually when solopreneurs go, God, I'm just going to do it myself. Like, why do I got to answer all these questions, right? If you have those documents, it means that other people can help you, right? So that would be the number one thing I would do. Once you have those documents, it can be really worth it. Like on Kenny's tea business, for a little while I was posting, and then I said to him, I'm old. Like, your tea people are young people. They're like 25-ish is the age group for tea. And so I don't sound like a 25-year-old, right? So there is a moment where you go, the tone is off, the inflections are off, or the way I say things is off. And that's not going to he's just going to find other 50-year-olds, which might be good too, right? Because there are lots of 50-year-olds who might want it, but Kenny's tea is targeted at 18 or 25-year-olds, right? So then you needed someone who sounds like they're 25. Otherwise, you're also not going to get that audience, right? So a couple of things to think about there, Ron. Hopefully that helps.
Go back to the beginning, Ron. It's always the same. It's like, I think it really comes down to, if I know who I am and I know what I'm doing and who I'm doing it for and why I'm doing it, I intrinsically, I should know where my market is. So if I can communicate all that clearly on a piece of paper, like go old school, a piece of paper, and I can actually do that, any marketer worth their weight in salt should be able to take that and say, I get it. Because the problem you can have, and Phil could attest to this, is if you don't do the work up front, and let's say you go and hire somebody, what do you want them to say?
Yeah.
Because if they're not clear on what you are, because you're not clear on what you are, they're going to do what they think is right. And that might be completely off the mark for what you are as a company, person, entity, whatever. Your ethos needs to be understood so that they can communicate with those that you are telling me where they are. And just for example, like doing that will also, if everybody wants to get into retail, it'll dictate which retailers to go to, not just which social media platforms. Which retailers make sense. Maybe your product doesn't lend to Walmart. Maybe it lends better to VitaHealth, right? But you're not going to know that if you don't do the work up front. Because even in terms of the marketing, if you think you're a Walmart consumer and all your media is going to VitaHealth people, you ain't going to get anybody.
Mm-hmm.
They're two different worlds, right? So it's really understanding that. So again, I think Phil and I, especially the last couple of weeks, we've been hammering this into people. Take the time up front, because it'll make it easier when you want to start communicating to your customers, and the platforms that you choose and how you write your keywords. All of it has to come from that work at the beginning.
Great, thanks.
Awesome. We're at 2:00, so I don't want to take more time. Thank you for joining us, and then Ron and Jennifer, thank you so much for letting us do this with you guys.
Well, thank you so much. I totally enjoyed it, and I'm sure a lot of us got a lot of really good points that you made, and I'm hoping this is going to help everyone, going forward with all of their socials.
Awesome. All right. Guys, thanks so much, and then I'll end the meeting here. Have a wonderful day. Yeah.
You too. And if anyone has any questions, again, reach out to Phil and Kenny, or you can reach out to me. Phil, you're going to be sending me some info
Yep.
as well that I can share out to everyone. So yeah, we'll be all good.
Awesome. Okay. Bye, guys.